Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're talking about a story of money, power, and identity. One that could literally redraw the map of North America. Yeah, a massive political conflict is brewing up in Canada, and it all starts with what's buried deep, deep underground.
So let's start with what's at the heart of all this. Deep beneath the ground in Alberta, that's a province out in Western Canada, there's a literal sea of oil. We're talking immense, immense natural wealth. But up on the surface, well, that's where the storm is gathering. And this isn't just any storm. It's one that has the power to tear an entire nation apart.
You know, this quote, it just perfectly captures the feeling, that growing frustration in Alberta. The sentiment is basically this: we're the economic engine of this country. We do the work, we produce the wealth, but our contributions just get siphoned off somewhere else. They feel completely shortchanged. And look, this isn't just grumbling in a coffee shop. This feeling is fueling a very real, very powerful political movement.
So you gotta ask, what is really happening here? I mean, why would Canada's wealthiest province even think about leaving? We're talking about one of the most stable, prosperous countries in the world, so why walk away? Okay, let's really get into it.
All right, this whole story, it really starts with a truly staggering amount of money. And of course, a national system that decides where all that money goes. To really get the anger, you first have to wrap your head around the sheer scale of what we're talking about.
Okay, so get this. To put it in perspective, Alberta has the third largest proven oil reserves on the entire planet. The entire planet. They're right behind Venezuela and Saudi Arabia. So you see, this isn't just some provincial resource. We're talking about a source of genuine geopolitical power, but it's held by a province, not a country. And yeah, it generates billions and billions of dollars in revenue every single year.
Okay, now here's where things start to get tense. Canada has this system, it's called equalization. The whole idea, going way back, was to share the wealth, to make sure someone in a poorer province can get basically the same level of public services, like healthcare or schools, as someone in a richer one. It's supposed to be a cornerstone of the whole Canadian system, but if you're sitting in Alberta, it feels a lot less like sharing and a lot more like a one-way street.
And this right here, this is the absolute core of the financial complaint. Just look at these numbers. In one recent year, Alberta paid $27 billion more into the federal system than it got back. $27 billion. When folks in Alberta see a number like that, the conclusion they draw is pretty simple. We're funding the rest of the country. And that feeling right there, that's the bedrock of this entire independence movement.
Okay, so you've got all this frustration, all this anger over the money. But how does that turn into an actual official vote on leaving the country? Well, it takes some work. You have to channel all that raw emotion into a formal political process.
And here's the really crucial part. The government itself actively paved the way for this to happen. See, an early attempt to get a referendum going was actually blocked by the courts. So what did the provincial government do? They just changed the laws. Seriously, they lowered the number of signatures you need, they removed a major legal hurdle, and just like that, the whole independence debate went from being a fringe idea to a very real, very tangible political possibility.
But it's not all just about anger and frustration. There are some really complex deals being made behind the scenes. And here's the ironic part. A key deal that was actually supposed to help Alberta to smooth things over, well, now it's being used as yet another reason to leave.
Okay, so on the surface, this deal looked fantastic for Alberta. They get a huge new pipeline to the coast, which means they can finally get their oil to global markets. Great, right? But there was a catch, a big one. The deal also came with a massive carbon tax hike and a bunch new regulations. And all that stuff, it jacked up the cost of producing every single barrel of oil. So now the critics are saying, look, this makes our oil too expensive. How can we compete with places like Russia or Saudi Arabia? Which, leads to a pretty good question. What's the point of having a shiny new pipeline if the oil inside is too expensive to sell? And this whole conflict, it's not just about money and politics. It's also about people. There are some major demographic shifts happening in Canada right now, and believe me, they are adding a whole new and very controversial layer to this entire story.
So check this out. In 2025, while Ontario, Canada's traditional economic heartland, actually saw its population go down, Alberta was absolutely booming. Its energy economy is like a magnet, pulling in workers and immigrants from all over Canada and the rest of the world. And of course, the separatists point right to this trend and say, see, people are flocking here because this is where the prosperity is. So why on earth should we be forced to share it with everyone else?
And this population boom, well, it's now being used to justify some pretty controversial new policies. The Premier's government is talking about prioritizing social services. We're talking healthcare, education for citizens and permanent residents. That means new arrivals and temporary residents might have to wait. Now, the official line is, hey, this is just about managing our resources, we have a capacity issue. But critics, they argue this creates a kind of two-tiered society and plays right into that separatist narrative of Alberta for Albertans.
So, this all brings us to the big one, the final crucial question. Is Alberta actually going to leave Canada? Or is this whole thing just the world's most aggressive negotiation tactic? Okay, so here's the reality check. Despite all the political noise, all the laws being changed, public opinion is still pretty firmly against separating. You've got almost 70% of Albertans who want to stay in Canada. But that 18% who do want to leave, they've gotten a lot louder and, frankly, more radicalized over the past few years. So, while the numbers aren't there for a full-on divorce just yet, the pressure is absolutely real. So, at the end of the day, what's the real takeaway here? Well, this threat of separation, it's probably the ultimate power play. It's a way to drag the rest of Canada to the negotiating table and hammer out a new deal on taxes, resources, and political power. It's a really high-stakes gamble, using all that immense wealth as leverage. And it leaves the entire country facing a pretty fundamental question. How exactly do you hold a nation together when its most powerful engine is threatening to break free?